He doesn't really rent it out for it. It's like, yeah, beautiful place. The open one simplifying. And I love the only furniture. Yes, student people. Sorry? Yes, student people. No, my wife's now. Even your wife's doing. So it's similar, I think, like small. Lost her very nicely. She's successful. Yeah, and it's really well. Yeah. Yeah, it's free. Sorry? Yeah, you know, it's free. 3+3, oh, yeah. And then you said chocolate. I miss, I'm so sad when you play this card. All the fun balls and then. I was highlight, so instead was for that.
All right, so what we had seen yesterday is that there's a bit of a machlokes as to how a person should react when he finds something that was deliberately placed down in a public area that could be interpreted as it was the intention of the owner to leave it there temporarily and come back for it later. The Machaber says clearly that you should not touch it, leave it alone, like a coat in the coat room or a hat in the coat room. However, the Ramah, it seems that in certain instances, advocates taking it, even though it might create more tircha, more disturbance for the owner, but maybe the owner would rather you take it and protect it than have it left out in the open for other people to steal it. So a person has the latitude to make that assessment for himself. But in general, you're not obligated to take something if it's in a public area that seems to have been put there deliberately. Okay? So why don't we go on? Next she'ela. Misha matza dvarim yikre erech shederech b'nei adam livdok kol zman im hem nimtzoim birshusam. What if a person finds things that are very valuable, things that you would normally want to check that they're with you at all times? Kagon shehu nosei al gaba v'nitein lahargish miyad b'nefilasa. So it might be something that you would normally carry on your back, or normally you'd like a bag of something. You'd normally be very aware if this was something that that if it fell from you, you would know about it right away. So it seems clear from the circumstances that they were put down deliberately, because otherwise a person wouldn't just leave them there. And it's not that they fell from a person, because you would know if they fell from you. So tshuva, kol davar shenikar shelo hiniach sham bekavana el haderech nefila ba, im hu davar sheyesh litlos sheba'alav hirgishu bo miyad kishenafel mimenu. He says, so in a case like this, where it may have fallen from the owner, but it's something that if it fell from the owner, it's likely that he would have discovered it right away. O machmat kovdo, o machmat chashivuto. Either because of its weight or because of its importance. And therefore he would have detected it immediately if it fell from him. Arehu shel motzo, then you're allowed to keep it, assuming that it doesn't have a siman. He says, because then you can assume that the owner has already had yeush. But that's provided that it has no siman and it came into your possession in a completely, therefore, permissible way, because you picked it up after the owner had yeush. Right? Amnam im yesh siman b'makom mitzias ha'aveda chayiv lahachriz afilu kishein siman beguf ha'chefetz. However, if there is a siman, either in the body of the item or the location itself is a siman. Let's say it fell in a place where you could clearly identify the landmarks of where it fell. Fell on the corner of such and such a street. So he says, then you would have to be machriz, then you'd have to announce that you found it. V'davka kishenikr shehunach sham ubal haveda yodea mekomo, provided that it seems like it was placed there deliberately, or that the owner, the owner knew immediately after it fell from him that it fell in that place. Okay, so again, these are things that I think we've covered before, so we're not going to spend a lot of time. Next she'ela, dvarim shenimtzoim b'mikveh, kagon sfarim magavot, o begadim chashuvim, ha'im yikachem lebeit al menat lahashivim ulahachriz aleim kechol aveda, o ein alav chovas hashava b'mikveh. You find something in the mikveh. Okay, you guys go to the mikveh every day, right? So,
Just looking.
That's why I was late.
Just looking.
yeah, just looking for stuff. That's not you definitely don't want to share that with your friends. Yeah. Let me just see I know what magavot are towels, but what are sfarim magavot? Yeah, let's see.
Maybe there's a comma.
Maybe there's a comma there.
Yeah.
Yeah, kagon sfarim magavot o begadim chashuvim. Right. So let's say you find a book, or you find a towel, or you find an article of clothing, an important article of clothing, not a sock, but a shirt, or something like that.
Jacket, hat.
Yeah, yeah,
You wouldn't want them to touch those towels.
yeah. Well, hey, but the guy that went in the mikveh, that was wearing that stuff, you went in the water after him. So just think about that. Anyway,
The smell was chlorine.
yeah.
Purifies all, right?
So should you take them home and be machriz, or there's no obligation to do this when you find stuff in a mikveh? So he writes, Tshuva, Dvarim hanimtzom beveis hamerchatz ve'ein bahem siman. So the classic case in the Gemara is beis hamerchatz, which is comparable to today's mikveh. They used to have bathhouses because people didn't have indoor plumbing. You needed to take a bath once a month, so you went to. You think I'm joking?
I've heard it less frequently than now.
For
Once a week, right?
once a week was typical. Once a week, but there were people that would only do once a month. In Europe, they were only doing once a week.
The French invaded big.
That's right. That's right. So,
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
What do they do in India?
They invented curry. Okay.
We'll hurry away.
So dvarim hanim. So anyway, ve'ein bahem siman, and they have no siman. Ein liga bahem. If they have no siman, you shouldn't touch them. Vafilu yesh bahem siman, adif shelo yiga bahem. And even if they do have a siman, it is still better not to touch them. Why? Deshema yavo'u haba'olim l'chapsam v'lo yimtzu osam. Because maybe the owners will come to look for them and they won't find it. U'mistaver shehunchu sham midas ba'olim. And it therefore makes sense that the owners place them there and they just forgot about them before they left. So they'll come back to the mikveh to retrieve them. Ubifrat im habalan darcho lasim kol hadvarim hanishkachim bitzad, v'nechshav k'makom hamishtamer. And this is certainly true if there's a special place for lost and found, that the mikveh attendant picks up things at the end of the day, puts them in a box or puts them in a corner, specifically for things that have been left in the mikveh. So then it's considered to be a protected area. And therefore, even if it does have a siman, you shouldn't touch it. But let's say there are things that are important. What is a khalifa? I know that word. Khalifa, is that a dress?
It's a suit.
A suit. Thank you. Migba'at is a turban, or a sha'on, or a watch. V'yesh bahem simin, v'chol kayotze bazeh, ein hamerchatz nechshav k'makom shamur, V'yesh chashash she'yilakach al-yedei anoshim she'enam mehuganim. He says if they're expensive items, then there's a concern that maybe the people in the mikvah will not do the right thing and may take those things for themselves. And therefore, yesh lo lahachriz al yedei modaot b'mikvah o b'shar mikamot v'yachzir l'balam al pi simanim. So it becomes very subjective. You have to sort of say to yourself, gee, this is an expensive jacket. It's, like a, what is it, Canada Goose jacket. And it's very expensive. It looks brand new. If I leave it here, I think someone might take it. So then you might say to yourself, you know what? Even though there is a lost and found, I'm going to take this with me because I'm fearful that someone may come in and just take this for themselves. V'yesh mekamot kamo mikvah u'mekamos siburim shetolam modaos merosh ba'ofen boleit shekol chayfet shelo yavo habolam lekachto misham b'meshach tekufa mesuyemet yachol lasa bo kirot eineim hefker v'chulei. There are places like the mikvah or like a kollel or a shul where they post a sign, a very conspicuous sign, that any person who does not claim his lost items within a year, usually not a year, it's usually 30 days or longer, then any lost items can be claimed but any person is welcome to take them, or the shul will reserve the right to sell these items, to dispose of them.
So the guy that the Canada Goose coat, he puts up a sign if somebody lost a coat, or what does he do?
Yeah, then he would post a sign. Yeah.
So Rabbi, what about if it's a book and in the case of a mikveh, could get badly damaged with water? And you have some responsibility to take that and protect it?
If you find what?
A book, like I say, some sort of a safer of some sort.
Yeah.
And if it's in the mikveh, especially if you've been to like Chabad, like this in the people going through.
Well, the mikveh attendant will probably take the book, take the safer.
Say the mikveh attendant only comes in once or twice a day.
Yeah, it's okay. The book will survive. It's not soaking.
So
It's not floating in the mikveh.
It doesn't fall into the same category as the Canada Goose jacket.
No, I don't think so, because it's not an expensive book. Yeah. So he quotes here a tshuva from Rav Moshe. Maybe we'll take a quick look at that tshuva. Chelik Beis, Siman Mem Hey. Let me just Chelik Beis. Was it Or Chaim? It could be. It's he doesn't say. It's probably Choshen Mishpat. So Rav Moshe has a tshuva here. Let me just share the screen. Heichan tzarich lahachriz. How are you supposed to make a public announcement? Hinei be'inyan nitinat modaot lahashavat aveda. He says, as far as putting up some kind of public sign, maspik sheyasim b'mekamot tziboriyim. It's enough just to put it in public places, k'gon bebate knesios, ubebate midrashos, ubemekamos acherim sherabe mitzuyim sham. So you just put it in the shuls, in the Batei Medrash, and other places where people frequent there. Kagon Eitzel Hama'aliyot, elevators, Shel Batim Hagdolim, like to put it by the elevator of the very tall buildings. Kamoshe Bizman HaMikdash Hayamachriz Begimel Regolim B'Yerushalayim. This is comparable to what they did in the times of the temple, that during the Shalosh Regalim, a person would make an announcement. Kidiisa bebav mitzia, afshi efshar shahakol yishmu, and even though you know that not everyone has heard the announcement, but nonetheless, samchim dechol misha avad lo aveda yavo lishmoa. We assume that anyone who's really lost something and is trying to retrieve it will come to listen whenever he hears that someone made an announcement about lost and found. The gam chavre isle, and also, your friend who's looking for his lost item will say, if you hear of anyone who's making an announcement, or if you see a sign, let me know. Aval ein matrichan hamotze yoter milahachriz b'makomos sherabim matsuyim. We don't require the finder to be matriach more than just put up some signs. Uvi'itonim sheyadua shekorin otam. He says when it comes to newspapers, where you know that people read this newspaper widely, gam shehu davar tov lahachriz sham, aval eina mechuyev lahotzi hotzos u'lechayev lamahamid l'shalmo. But you're not obligated to. Why? Because it costs money. So we don't burden the finder to incur the cost, nor do we require him to charge the person who lost the item. The gam yochel hamabid liton ki af al yedei hamodaot ha'acherot ha'yodea mimatza avedato. So he says, and also the person who lost the item would say, why did you spend money on an ad in the paper? I would have just seen, I saw the sign. Why should I have to pay you for the ad? So Rav Moshe is not an advocate of doing that. Now, Aveda shenimtzeis b'yeshiva. He says, what about a lost item that's found in the yeshiva? He says, V'nei tov l'takein Legabe Aveda shenimtza b'yeshiva shimlo ba baal haveda bizman mesuyam shaz haveda tia li hayeshiva ulamotza. So it's good to have a rule that if the yeshiva should have a policy that if the person who lost the item does not come within a certain fixed amount of time, then the lost item belongs to the yeshiva or the person who found it. But you have to make the announcement to all the members of the yeshiva. We should probably put in an announcement. I think we do this once a year. We say that the lost and found is in the office, and if you don't come within 30 days, we will dispose of the items. Ish mi bachutz shelo shayach sheyoda hatakana. But if you suspect that the person who lost the item may have been a visitor from out of town, ein mo'ila hatakana. So then you can't dispose of it within 30 days. Ach mistama ein lizdapek shema haya ish kazeh sheholchin basarov. But you're not obligated to fear that. In other words, if a guy leaves a hat and the hat says New York Yankees or the LA Dodgers, and he leaves and you find a hat like that. So there's a greater likelihood that the person was from out of town. Okay? Because otherwise, why doesn't he have a Blue Jays hat? Well, maybe.
I can give you lots of reasons.
No, there's a lot of people that are fans in cities of.
That's true. That's true. But the point is that there has to be a reason to suspect that it may have been from a visitor from out of town.
If you find there's a label inside it's come from a builder from out of town.
Yeah. What would be another example where there has to be where you suspect that he may have been from out of town? It could be that it's American money, but you find American money. So then there's a reason to suspect that he's from out of town. But if there's no reason to suspect, based on what the object looks like, or based on the time of year that the person who lost it is from out of town, then you can abide by the 30-day policy or whatever policy you have. Okay. Let me just see. Yeah, so there's two more items that Rav Moshe addresses. Im shayach tevius ayin al ma'os. If you find cash, can you say that maybe a person will be able to recognize that cash is his? Ulagabi im shayach tevius ayin al ma'os. Hine al matbeot demini matachot kasha sheyet tevius ayin. He says on coins, it's very hard for a person to say, oh, I recognize that coin, that's mine. Aval al kesef shel niyar shayach tevius ayin. Gam yesh simanim kegon hamispar u'chadayma. But when it comes to bills, then it could be that they're folded a certain way, or the number of bills or the denomination of the bills could itself be a simon. And therefore, if you find paper money, so then you would have to be machriz. Aval be'etzem ha'af kesheika simen mufak almos enam klum kidiisa bebava metzia daf chavhei afilu shmo kasav alav lo amar klum lefi she'ein simen l'matbeya. But the Gemara nonetheless says that cash, even if it has the guy's name written on it, is not considered a good simon. You know why? Because the Amar Dilma Afuke Afko Minish Achrina Nofal. Because maybe the guy spent the cash and gave it to somebody else. So I could write my name. I don't think it's legal, but if you write your name on a bill, that doesn't mean it's yours. Maybe then you brought it to the supermarket, paid for your groceries, and it circulated through the community. So the only person that you should trust if he says that that's my money is if he's a Talmud Chacham, because then he's not suspected of lying on something like this. And then if he provides a simon, you should relinquish it to him. So in a situation like that, where a person finds cash, if there's a number of bills and there are certain denominations, then you have an obligation to be machriz, to announce it. And if a person provides a simon, even if he doesn't know the number of bills or denominations, but if he says it had a fold or it had an initial on this bill, so if he's a Talmud Chacham, then you should relinquish it to him. Yeah, Doug.
But haven't we had this before where if the bills were bound, then obviously it's different?
If they were tied with rubber band or something like that, that would be a simon also.
But if they're loose, then the only thing you can verify is whether they can tell you the value.
The total value of the bills. Correct. Correct. Exactly. And then finally, he has this one. He says, "Ma ya'aseh b'metzia shamrinan sheyehi munachad sheyavo Eliyahu." Well, we've seen this already. What do you do with a lost item? So we've seen from the poskim already that you do have a right to sell it and then mark down how much it was, so that you'll have that permanently in your files. It's exactly what Rav Moshe says as well. If it's beyond the time that you would be obligated to try and tend to this or protect this item, so then you should just write down what its value is when you found it. V'hu adin b'davar sheyesh bo siman yirsham kol simanim v'yirsham gam shavius ha'aveda imu yadua. And even if it's something that has a simon, but the time has elapsed after you made the announcement and no one has come forward, so then write down the simanim, write down its value. And if it's not clear what it's worth, you have to get it evaluated by 3 expert valuators. And then you can use it or you can sell it. And that's what our Chazal mean, that when they say you have to leave it until Eliyahu comes. Doesn't mean that you literally have to leave it, let's say, this unwieldy item in your house, but it means that based on what you've written down, if a person would ever come forward, you'd be able to say to him, yes, I found this item, I used it or I sold it, and here's the money that is owed to you based on its value. So that's a few items on Hashava Saveda.
You have a box full of stuff that you're going to get rid of in 30 days. You're going to go through and make an itemized list of everything you've got there and put a value against it?
No. This is completely independent of what we learned previously. A yeshiva or a shul has a right to post a sign that says anything that's lost here, if you don't reclaim it after 30 days, we will dispose of it. The shul has no obligation to do what we just said. We're talking about
Right,
a private person.
Right.
Yeah.
Like a dry cleaner, sometimes you have stories where people
Yeah.
will leave stuff or a pawn shop or leave something
Yeah.
where they won't come back.
That's right.
What's the obligation in terms of timing?
As long as they post the sign, then anyone who goes or patronizes that place will know that the rules are, if I don't claim it within 30 days, they don't have the space to keep these items.
Or the receipt also.
I think it says it on the receipt.
On the document.
Yeah.
There was, or maybe still is legislation, I think it was called the Unclaimed Articles Act, it says dry cleaners and others have these 30 days and stuff.
30 days, makes sense.
When I was just thinking of summer camps, I've been down at Camp Stone helping them clean up the cabins, the kids have left, I mean, the amount of stuff, it's just. That's purposely well. No, some of it's clothing, some of it's.
No, the kids.
Sports and stuff.
Yeah, I still remember when we went for Visitors Day many years ago, and like my kid's toothpaste tube had never been opened, and the shampoo bottle had never been opened, never been touched. And can you imagine the toiletries that are left in those places?
It's like.
And then-
Crates and crates.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they give them away to, like Women's Refuge in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So lots of shampoos.
Yeah,
and
sure.
conditioners and all sorts of stuff, and, but I mean, it's just like crates and crates and crates of this, it gets left.
The TTC has an option.
The TTC, yeah.
We go down for
Right.
Sunday.
Yeah, okay. She'ela, Misha Motza Aveda v'nischayev bahashavasa, ha'im chayev lishmor aleha v'gam letapel ba'osa Aveda shelo titkalkel. What is my level of obligation of caretaking an item that I found? Do I have to make sure that it doesn't get damaged? We did learn this from the Gemara, that if it's like a certain fabrics, you have to shake them out once every day or once every week, so that it doesn't become moldy, right? Odavka lahanicha b'makom shomer v'enu chayv l'tapel b'os aveda afim yesh chashash shenitchalkel. Or do we say that no, you can just leave it as long as it's in a protected area, and that's all you have to do? So he says the tshuva, no, hamotze aveda shenitchayev b'hashavata chayev lishmor alea ulanicha b'makom shamor v'gam l'tapel b'ota aveda shelo titkalkel. You have to not only leave it in a protected area in your home, but you also have an obligation to attend to it so that it doesn't get ruined by the conditions in which you left it. I think is the correct way of pronouncing it. You have to air it out every once in a while until the owner comes. You have to treat it like it's your own item. If that's, whatever the item requires in order for it to stay in good shape. Okay, now, Mesirat Aveda Lamachlakata Avedot b'mishtara. Is it sufficient just to give something over to the lost and found at the police station? Could you do that? Or the subway station? Or whatever, or the shul, or whatever. Ha'im hamotze Aveda muter lo limsor et Aveda Lamachlakata Avedot shel mishtara. Am I allowed to do that? Can I say I dispense with my duty by giving it over to the lost and found? Oh, kaven sheyesh chashash shelo yimsor et aveda kedin ein limsor lahem. Or do you have to suspect? No, maybe they're not going to do the right thing.
Right.
Or maybe they'll give it to the wrong person. Maybe they don't know the halacha, whatever. So the tshuva is yesh omrim shemuter limsor ha'aveda lemachlakat avedot shel mishtara. Some say that that's perfectly permissible. Provided that the lost and found has a reputation of doing the right thing. Okay, and meaning that they make sure that whoever lost it gives the proper simanim and so forth. V'yesh misha omer michashash shelo yinhagu kedin, and some say no, out of a concern that maybe they won't act correctly. Yesh limsor prate ha'aveda lemishtara, v'zu tifna et ha'oved lemotze, v'zeh yachzur lo al pi simonim. That some say no, if you have a fear that they're not going to behave properly, and that is a legitimate fear, what you should do is you should tell the police, I found a lost item, write down on a paper, here's all the things I know about the item, here are its simanim, here's where I found it, and v'zu tifnet ha'oved lemotze, and then, and they should please, and here's my phone number. If someone comes and is able to provide these simanim, they're happy to contact me. B'zeh yachsulu al pi simanim. And that's what you can do. But so it's a machlokas in the poskim. Maybe we should just spend a little bit of time on this.
What's the odds are if the lost item is a non-Jew? On a public area.
Right. So if you find it, right, so like we learned before, the mitzvah of Hashavas Aveda only applies to a fellow Jew, right? So in Eretz Yisrael, which is where this is being written, it wouldn't, so then you'd have this obligation no matter what. If you find it in a public area in downtown Toronto, however, you don't have the obligation to return it, but a good Samaritan would do it anyway, especially if you can make a Kiddush Hashem. Okay, worth researching this a little bit more. We'll hold it